Hello and welcome back to the Birdcage. I'm Jack Kenna, joined alongside Ben Hooke to recap Kansas's 92-86 loss at Allen Fieldhouse in double OT at the hands of the Houston Cougars. Ben, you were there, you were writing for the Kansan. What were your initial thoughts after the game?
Well, one, that's an unbelievably painful loss for Kansas, an almost inconceivable one. And two, it's the best basketball game I've ever been in live. I think that's the two easiest takeaways for me.
Hmm.
Um, it was a tremendous game. I mean, it was back and forth. Never I don't think the game ever got to a double digit margin the whole way through. I
Yeah,
mean,
I can't
maybe
remember if it
Kansas
ever
had a
did.
had a run in the first half where they might have separated by like 10, but I don't think it was ever like that.
Yeah, I
So,
can I can take a look right here. It'll tell me um what the largest lead was for each team. Well, it tells me lead changes. Yeah, I can't find largest lead. I'm sure we
but
could
yeah,
find it on ESPN or something, but
I could probably pull up the sports systems data and get it. But yeah, um, a tremendous game, back and forth, great offense,
Mhm.
lots of dunks. Um, Two teams doing really, really well, and just I came away so impressed with Houston. I thought they were unkillable, and really they just had that kind of grit that a lot of the really great Kansas teams had.
Mhm. Yeah.
Which, that's a story in itself, right? Where one of the things that it always felt like you could bank on when Kansas was playing against Duke or playing against Carolina or one of those things was that Kansas just had that type of grit and that type of never say die, and that type of toughness.
Yeah.
And it really felt like Houston beat them because of those couple of things and because Kansas couldn't inbound the ball.
Yeah, that's one thing. Before we talk about inbounding the basketball, let's talk about our preview predictions. You predicted a close Houston win. I
I
predicted
was right.
Allen Fieldhouse thriller. So,
So we're two of two.
in a sense, this is the most accurate prediction we have ever had on this channel
Yeah.
throughout the panel. It was insane. I wasn't there in person. I was in Kansas City, but I can only imagine the atmosphere inside and the tension inside Allen Fieldhouse after we couldn't inbound the basketball and we had that 5 second count.
Oh my goodness. It was incredible. I mean, and you want to talk about atmosphere and noise. It was, I think, 117 or 118 when they brought out the decibel counter at the start of the game.
Mhm.
It was 120 in the final minute and like
Yeah, it got
120
louder.
and 120 in overtime. Yeah, exactly. It got louder, which is unbelievable. Um, so yeah, I thought that was tremendous. And yeah, the first failed inbound was really like I think the crowd was actually angrier about that one. The second one, it was just I mean, it was unbelievable, because they throw it in. Um, for whatever reason, Dickinson didn't just like stand still and try to go up like a wide receiver and just make the catch. He tried to like come back and get the ball.
Hmm.
And then whatever the heck that defense was, and then the shot goes in and the whole place just goes silent. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, that's insane. And we'll talk about individual performances later, but just talking about this ending is too important not to talk about it at the beginning. They blew it twice.
Yeah, yeah, very much so.
And it's funny because the same thing that killed Kansas in regulation killed them in double or in the first overtime, their inability to inbound the basketball. What were your opinions? I know you brought up JoJo Tugler in the preview, but what were your opinions on the way Kansas lined up to inbound the basketball? Having a guy like Tugler guarding the inbound pass, what were your,
Right.
your thoughts? Like what was kind of
So
going through your mind?
Samson talked about this in the presser afterwards.
Hmm.
But really what I think it was a failure to adjust by Kansas, where um, on that first inbound after where Kansas didn't use the timeout, Houston saw Mayo go to put the ball in bounds, and they had Tugler guarding because they knew that Mayo's only 6'4", Tugler's 6'8", but has a wingspan of 7'6". He's got wicked long arms, very jumpy. And so if you have Tugler guarding that inbounds pass, then that means that there's no ball you can throw that's going to get over the top.
Hmm.
And that means that you can then play the inbounders in a different way because it means you can pressure them going north.
Hmm.
So like generally in those inbound situations, you're always going to pressure the inbounders going south because you're gonna want to try to force them to run towards the baseline and catch the ball because that's the open side you're going to leave.
Hmm.
And then you trap them, pressure them. Ideally, you want to send it into the corner. That's where the most traps happen because that's two sidelines to defend against. And you're going to defend, and you're not going to let something get over your head.
Yeah.
But when you've got a guy that big guarding the inbounds pass, and this was a Celtics thing as well. When the Celtics
Mhm.
back in the day with Brad Stevens, when they had Taco Fall, they would put Taco Fall in at the end of games as an inbounds pass defender. I think they did this at UCF as well. They might have. And it's exactly that. It's because if you have a giant guy guarding the ball, then you can pressure all the players saying, yeah, you can release backwards because the ball's not going to get that.
Yeah.
And so that was really
It's a smart way to play.
it's a very smart way to play. But the way Kansas had to counter with that is have Hunter Dickinson put the ball in. Because
Exactly.
Dickinson's bigger than Tugler, and Tugler could still contest that. It's pretty like even if you have a big guy guard the inbounds, it's hard regardless. But you have Dickinson do that, he can whip that overhead pass, and now suddenly you're not just think now the defense can't defend going northwards. The defense has to defend going southwards
Yeah.
or has to defend going east west.
Exactly. My thing was, why not have Hunter Dickinson inbound the ball? Because then you can have Zeke Mayo, who so far this season has been a pretty reliable free throw shooter.
Right,
So even
exactly.
if
And
you
you
can't get the ball in the hands of your number one option, you're getting the
you
ball in the hands of someone who's capable at the line.
The other thing I had questions about was putting Coit on the floor because while he is a good free throw shooter, he is a really small target. He's like 5'8", and
Mhm.
every player Houston out on the floor was bigger than him, which makes it really hard to get the ball into his
Yeah.
hands. And also in that situation where you have a turnover, that's the last guy you want to have contesting a shot.
Mhm. Exactly.
Um, the other thing that was really interesting that I someone pointed out to me when we were talking today. I watched it back because the whole highlights of this are on YouTube, and the full game should be up in a day or two. And I'll probably go watch this back as an ESPN classic type thing. But what they told me, and they're right, is that actually after Sharp hit that deep three that cut it to three, Rylan Griffin was the one who put the ball in, and Griffin actually got the ball in to Mayo. And as he threw the ball, they'd already whistled for a timeout. So there was a scenario in which Kansas, pocketed the timeout and maybe they get the ball in and maybe Mayo, goes to the line and sinks a couple free throws.
Yeah.
Who knows? That could have been what happened, but it was an unbelievable ending sequence. I mean, I don't think you could possibly imagine that in Allen Fieldhouse, Kansas would be up six with their sixth-year point guard who's played 72 games in Allen Fieldhouse, going to the line, having shot two free throws. Um, like there was some stat they pulled up today. He'd basically, of all the times he shot two free throws in Allen Fieldhouse, he'd missed both of them once in his career. He misses both. Then Houston's guard, who's playing on a bum ankle, by the way, unbelievable grit to show up. He
It,
looked wrecked on the first play of the game, and he
yeah.
came back and he played like 35 minutes. So
It was
credit to
insane.
him. Yeah, hits a bomb over a defender. Then the inbounds fiasco, and then your backup, like this backup guard who'd been incredible all night, by the way,
Mhm.
hits the clutchest three of the night, and you go to another overtime. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
an unbelievable sequence.
it really was. I have I'm lucky enough to be in Brian Haney's sports broadcasting class. For those who don't know, he's the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks. And we were talking about this game in particular, and he was saying for as much as Kansas did wrong, Houston still had to execute.
Right,
It
of
was
course. They
extremely impressive, just the ability that Houston showed to execute with time and situation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's fair. I think also Kansas had the game in their hands.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
for as well as Houston
You can't deny
executed,
that.
if DeJuan Harris sinks one of those two free throws, then they need a 4-point play.
Yeah, it's over. It's that was the craziest ending that I've watched in a basketball game for a long time.
It was absurd.
I turned the game off twice, and it was
Why?
well, my phone was at 3%, and I was walking in Nordstrom's, so
Oh,
it was one of those that I didn't really have an opportunity. But you know what? I wasted my battery life watching the end of that one, and I'm glad
yeah,
I did. It was incredible. Let's get into some of those players who just shined. I mean,
sure.
this is the second game in a row where we're able to sit here and talk about Flory just being an absolute X factor. He had a career high 19 points, 7 rebounds. It wasn't a double double like he had at TCU, but this is still his best game, arguably, as a Kansas Jayhawk.
Yeah, he was tremendous. I mean, I think here's what I'll say. As long as this loss isn't like a psychological breaking point loss for Kansas, which it very well could be. You
Hopefully.
know, there are some great teams who just have that sort of psychological damage afterwards.
Hmm.
This was a huge step forwards in terms of figuring some things out because they ran the Dickinson Badunga lineup a lot. They ran it the most they'd ran it all year,
Hmm.
and they ran it super, super well. And I
Yeah.
thought it was really excellent. And they ran a lot of sets. CJ Moore had some really good film breakdowns of it earlier today. And he was exactly right that basically Kansas didn't pull Hunter Dickinson out of the paint and use him as a screener. They used Badunga as a screener, which A makes Dickinson more of a threat to offensive rebound, and two means that whenever Kansas can get him the ball, it warps the whole Houston defense because Houston then has to send two at the ball.
Yeah. It's
And also just yeah, I think Self really figured out, and Kansas really figured out using Badunga as the roll man cutter because he has such awesome hand skills in terms of getting catches and getting up to the rim as fast as possible. And so, he's got, you can see where he's a soccer player because he's got that sort of deceptive ability and short speed acceleration. Reminds you a little bit of some of those big strikers who everyone said were slow back in the day. And then you look at them and they get in the 6 yard box and boom, they've moved 4 feet to the left and gotten their foot on the ball and put it in.
yeah, it's special the way he is able to navigate and see the floor for being
Yeah,
so young and so new into a pretty intricate offense.
yeah,
Kansas runs something tough.
yeah. They don't run free open stuff. So I thought he was excellent. And then I thought for they didn't really do all that much with him, but Riley Griffin was awesome.
He was terrific.
19 points, 5 of 6 on threes, which you can't ask him to repeat every game. That's
Mhm.
sort of an outlier performance. Or not 19, he had 17.
Mhm.
Because he had 5 threes and then he hit a pair of free throws in overtime.
Yeah, he went two
But
for four from the line,
yeah, and he missed two in the
and
double OT.
we'll talk about those later too.
Oh well. Um, yeah, I mean he was awesome. And it was just decisiveness, quickness, getting in, taking the shots. I would have liked for him to be a little bit better on defense. But I really think that's another warper of coverages. Because if you have a guy
Absolutely.
who's such a catch and shoot threat on that side, and now suddenly you're thinking, well, now I got to go tag Badunga. But now, wait, Griffin's on this side as well. I can't go tag Badunga. Now I'm leaving a shooter out on the perimeter.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, Samson said it as well. He was like, yeah, those two, they warped how we were going to cover. And
Yeah.
they made us change how
Yeah. It's impressive.
we're two of the best offenses in the entire country.
There you go. I thought I lost you for a little bit. You're back though.
I froze up a little bit. We'll see how this comes out in the final recording.
Yeah, we'll see. But you're right. Rylan Griffin really emerged, and he was key in Kansas, able to just maintain. Well, they didn't win, so how important was he? He provided a spark. Nonetheless,
Again,
he had a
I think
phenomenal game.
they didn't win. They choked. They also took the number 7 team in the country, who Ken Palm says should be the number 3 team in the country, to double overtime.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Looking at the other two big names for KU, Hunter Dickinson, 17 points, 6 of 11 from the field, 8
It
rebounds.
was
He had a good offensive night. I mean,
he was fine.
you
Like
can't
it
really
was this
complain about Hunter.
it was the sort of performance you like to see from him. I thought he was more assertive. I thought there were less sort of possession killer pull up or jumpers he was taking and all of that. Thought he could have been a little better on the glass. I thought Houston managed to get after them for offensive rebounding. I thought
Mhm.
really, especially down the stretch there, and I thought the game was over when Badunga fouled out with 18 seconds into that second overtime.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean the dagger play of the game, right, was Jawan Roberts, who we should talk about because he was Houston's best player and he was
yeah,
so good that game and just took it to the KU front court. But on that play, he gets that little lefty floater, misses it, and then manages to can opener the rebound out of Dickinson's arms and put it back up for two, and that was the game because it was
yeah.
Houston was up two and they went up four, and that was it.
It was,
Um, yeah. So in that situation, I would have liked Dickinson to be more assertive on the glass, but he was fine.
yeah,
I don't know. Like he gave you his like 17 and 9, 17 and 8, which you normally expect from him. So good for him. And DeJuan Harris was great. People are going to talk about the free throws. It's an obvious thing. It's a really unfortunate time for that type of anomaly to happen.
yeah,
He also played 48 minutes, had 12 assists and a single turnover the whole night.
yeah.
And he guarded LJ Cryer for every single minute LJ Cryer was on the floor. And
It,
LJ Cryer was bad.
it's an impressive performance for DeJuan Harris, and it is absolutely devastating that it's going to be overshadowed by the two missed free throws at the end of it. Because 12 assists to one turnover is just not something you see in college basketball ever.
No,
You
he
don't
was
see
excellent.
it. And it was a great performance by DeJuan Harris outside of literally two free throws. And then Zeke Mayo, the Lawrence kid, was all right. He couldn't shoot the
He
ball very
finally
well.
he finally came online in that second overtime, but I just think he needs to be more decisive. Where Griffin, you really saw at the end of that game, he got that decisiveness. He got that sort of fire in his eyes of like this ball hits my hands, it's going up.
Yeah.
And Mayo just like there's all of these, I love how he uses shot fakes and moves defenders around and does all that. But at some point, you got to shoot the gosh darn ball.
Yeah.
Like he passes up so many good looks, looking for better looks. Um, but
Sometimes
then
you're not going to get those better looks.
my other thing is that like when he does that and he does all that, moving around the defenders and stuff, he's got to be a better passer because when you take a defender out of the play like that, then suddenly you're 5 on 4. And you gotta figure out where the open guy is in those sort of 5 on 4s. Also,
Mhm.
um, I watched it back. He almost certainly got fouled at the near the end of regulation with like
Yes.
45 seconds left with Kansas up four.
On the shot.
No, yeah, up four. He got fouled on a three. Houston clearly hit him. It was the same call they got Flory on against Javon Small in the West
It,
Virginia game.
it was the shot in the corner, right? The pump
Yes,
fake, and
yeah,
then he drew the defender right into his body and put it up
yeah,
looking
and they
for
didn't
the
call
call,
it,
and they
which
didn't give
was
it to him.
it was bizarre.
Yeah,
So yeah, I don't know. He could be better. It is a little bit worrisome how his stats are in games against like top 50 competition versus against normal, where I'll see if I can pull these up. Um,
a little
I'm
mid
still
podcast stat.
a little podcast Bart Torvik check in.
There you go, Bart Torvik. What a source!
It's a great source. It's
It
very
is
helpful.
a phenomenal source. That Ken Palm, Evan Mia. We have some great ones for us available. But yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
mean, you hit it on the head.
Mayo Mayo against top 50 competition is shooting just 41% effective field goal. Is just 11 of 48 from three. So that's 23% shooting. Is 80% from the line, which is fine, but only 25 attempts. And is shooting 47% on twos. That's not great.
No.
I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, the whole team doesn't get to the line, but he's especially not great. Rylan Griffin, on the other hand, against top 50 competition, 53% from three on 28 attempts. Pretty good.
So wait, all I'm hearing from this is Rylan Griffin's a big game player.
Yeah, and Rylan Griffin needs to shoot more. Yeah,
Yeah.
so like in general, Mayo's 41 of 144 for 36% three-point shooting, which is pretty good.
Hmm.
Rylan Griffin is all the way up at 40%. So good
There you
for
go.
him. But yeah, like Mayo loses a lot of his percentages in these big games, and I think he kind of psychs himself out. Um, I'm not entirely sure. He was great against North Carolina. I think that was probably his best game of the year.
Hmm.
He was good against West Virginia as well,
Yeah.
which that's actually I think a quad one win as well because they're really good and they beat Iowa State, although they did lose at home to Arizona State. Not sure what happened there.
Yeah. Let's switch over and talk about Houston a little bit because the players that we pointed to during the preview all had contributions at some point in the game. We talked about Juwan Roberts. Man, he was excellent.
But yeah,
Was excellent.
awesome. I mean that lefty hook he has is just money.
And
He just gets to his spot, left elbow, left block, bangs into you with the shoulder a couple of times, separates, puts it up,
it's not
cash.
I wouldn't necessarily call it a pretty shot. It kind of looks
No,
like he's just chucking it up there, but man, it goes in.
but yeah, it does. He was awesome.
Yeah, he was
Um,
awesome.
I, I thought Milos Uzan was great for them. Hit two very difficult floaters. I think, we watch it with DeLon Harris. The floater is not an easy shot.
No,
And
it's
he hit
not.
two in a row near the end of regulation that really got Houston back into the game.
Hmm.
So he was great. Um, I thought
Didn't
Emmanuel
his
Sharp,
dad like your tweet as well?
he did. Shout out to him.
There you go.
Shout out to Mr. Uzan. But yeah, DeJuan Harris, or oh, wait, my bad. Emmanuel Sharp was awesome for playing on a clearly not healthy leg. He was very good.
Yeah, Samson
And
said
then
that he didn't play or he didn't practice the entire week.
yeah, yeah,
So,
and he like pulled up, went to the locker room on the first play of the game, and then came back in.
yeah.
So guts. And JoJo Tugler was awesome. Had like 9 points, 5 blocks, 7 boards. I'm telling you, he's very underappreciated. Also, the first player I've ever seen to block Hunter Dickinson's jump shot, which
Yeah.
is not an easy feat.
Not when you're 7'2". It's hard when you're 7'2", and he did it. He was impressive because I know JoJo Tugler, but I didn't think he would make as much of an impact in this game
He's
or as much as you did. You came
yeah,
in the podcast
well,
right away and said he's going to be an X factor, and he was.
he such a fascinating player because he's a player when you like look at the box score stuff, like just the base points, rebounds, block stuff, you're like, yeah, he's pretty good. And then you watch him play or you look at the advanced numbers and you're like, holy cow, this dude is incredible.
Yeah.
And he just was because like, he only had 7 rebounds, but every time he's getting in on those rebounds, he's poking the ball all about. And suddenly now that easy rebound for Badunga or for Dickinson or for Rylan Griffin or whoever. Now that rebound's carrying all over the place, and now Houston can get it. And he just has that length stuff and all that. I think he's going to stay in college another couple of years. And I would, next year, if you get early odds, I'd place a bet on him to be National Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, he's a disruptor for sure. And that is, man, his game just fascinates me and impresses me. It was a gosh darn good performance from JoJo Tugler.
And
Malik
just for Houston in
Wilson.
general, my
Malik
Myleik
Wilson.
Wilson. Oh my goodness.
Is it
Just like
Miley?
it's Myleik. It's
Oh,
Mylik. He was
Miley
great.
Wilson. He deserves his name to be pronounced correctly.
Tip of the
Wow.
cap. I mean,
What a
it
game.
was he shot like 8 of 10 from the floor, all on tough shots. Like
Mhm.
he was taking like dribble pull-ups and stuff and just getting him to go, getting him to go. He kept him afloat in that first half, and
Mhm.
he was good in the second half, and then he hit the biggest shot of the night. So full flowers to him. He was amazing.
Yeah,
And Sampson gave him credit, and he said, "Yeah, last year he was sort of similar. They had a game at Cincinnati where he sort of got in that role and kept him afloat. But he's a player, who fits that system, who's tough and who doesn't give an inch on defense and all that. So
it was
that's pretty good.
incredible. And we also saw a great coaching matchup between Kelvin Sampson and Big Self, Bill Self. Whenever you can get two coaches like that in the same building, it's bound for a good night. What were your thoughts about, or what were your thoughts on the presser? Because I know you were there for the whole time. What was the
Yeah.
vibe looking like
Um,
from the Kansas side in particular?
Not good. It was, it was a devastating loss. I think, Griffin was sort of upbeat about it, and he was like, "Yeah, it's better we lose a game like this now and then lose a game like this in March." Or could you imagine how gutting of a loss this would have been if this was like in Wichita in the round of 32 or in like in Indianapolis in the Sweet 16 or something like that? Like that's a never recover type of loss.
That's an always
Um,
remember type of loss for sure.
I mean, this is still going to be an always remember type of loss, but just even more.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Self was just like, it's going to sting. We're not going to be over it probably tomorrow. We're not going to be over it Monday, but we got to be back on track because UCF's coming to town.
It's just one of those games where you look at the Kansas schedule in particular, and you have UCF on tomorrow. You have UCF
Yep.
tomorrow,
Who are
but
you
then you
bringing on to
travel.
preview that, you think?
What'd you say?
Who do you think you're bringing on to preview that?
Well, I was gonna maybe get Mr. James Madden to come on. He was at the
Oh, that'd
game,
be excellent.
the first bout down there, but we have some tough games on this
We
schedule.
do.
We
This
really
is,
do. You
well,
have
have you
at
looked at the
Baylor
schedule
versus
this
Iowa
weekend?
State.
This is an absurd scheduling decision by the Big 12. I don't know what they were thinking.
Neither do
Kansas,
I.
they get UCF, they get an extra day of rest, which is very nice. Saturday they're playing Baylor, so they travel Friday. It's a 3 p.m. tip, so maybe they're going to squeeze and back to Lawrence that night.
Yeah.
And then you have Iowa State 8 p.m. on Monday, number three team in the entire country. I was really hoping that Duke was going to lose tonight, so that then, because then with an Auburn loss, then Iowa State's the number one team in the country, and that would be pretty gosh darn tremendous to see number
Yeah.
one coming into Allen Fieldhouse for a game like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just it's no rest for the wicked.
Yeah. I mean, and then you have to go to K-State, and
I will
they
be at
beat
that
us the
one.
past few times there. So
Yeah.
this
Um,
schedule for KU just ramps up, and pretty much where I was trying to get with that was I understand that you can't have every single game in the Big 12, but you let this Houston game slip away. Whereas
yeah,
if you could have before the season, you were hoping to
I had this
probably,
marked as a loss. I thought we were going to lose one of the Houston games. Or KU was going to lose one of the Houston games.
yeah.
Uh, I thought it was going to come at the Fertitta Center. I wasn't quite confident they were going to lose in Allen Fieldhouse.
Hmm.
Um, But yeah, I mean, honestly, you got to take your licks and you got to keep winning the games that matter. Um, can't can't lose tomorrow, can't lose on Saturday at Baylor. You get Iowa State back, and you get back on track. You keep working on taking chunks out. And you remember that this is a conference where it's really tough to win on the road.
Yeah.
And you remember that, Houston still has to go to Colorado. And
Colorado beat UConn.
yeah, and there's some huge games on these schedules left, and there's games that trip you up. And Texas Tech are good. I think that's pretty universally true.
Yeah,
Texas Tech, I don't know if they're as good as Kansas. They took Iowa State to overtime in their
they
barn.
did.
Anything can happen. So I don't think you say it's over here. The margin for error just keeps shrinking,
Yeah.
but you keep winning. You take the losses you can. You learn from the losses. You figure out how to acclimate KJ back into this team where I think you should really have him come off the bench.
That's what I'm thinking as well.
I think you just swap him for where Store is right now and
Yeah.
just have him come in, fly around, win every 50-50 ball, um, throw down a couple of slams, and you're good to go.
Yeah. I agree. Do you have any final comments about the KU Houston game? Any final thoughts in your noggin?
It was a heck of a game. Um, it was a shame that one team had to lose, more of a shame that it had to be Kansas, but it was awesome. I wrote a piece about it where I was just like, yeah, that's probably one of the best games I've ever watched. It was an epic, is what I think I described it as eventually.
Hmm.
You can go read that at Kansan.com. Read a lot of stuff at Kansan.com. We've got our staff picks for the UCF game tomorrow coming out, or they're already out actually, and some other stuff. So good stuff there. Jack, thank you so much for having me on. These two podcasts have been a lot of fun, and I will see you next time.
I appreciate it, Ben. Thank you.